Well, it's 10 after 8 in the morning, January 19th. Just getting ready to go for a morning walk again. It's all wet outside and the sky is gray. Typical January day here in Pennsylvania, southwestern Pennsylvania. Oh. Good morning. No hat today, it's not raining. Checked out YouTube this morning. Watching the drama unfold on the competition between the, well, they call themselves researchers for Bigfoot, and some of them do have the credentials to be a researcher. Other ones really seem to me that they just want to gain a following of some kind, start some kind of movement. You might say another religion, trying to organize and get contributions, make some kind of a, should I say commune or community maybe. Well, they can have the people that look up to them in their competition be much closer. It just, oh well, that kind of a concept is just a little too extroverted for me, I guess. There's something I enjoy about being alone. Of course, I like friends, but I think that, you know, groups and crowds, to me, they interfere with my concentration. They're a distraction. I like solitude with, oh, just one or two, maybe a handful special friends and people instead of a crowd. Sound like somebody coming up behind me. Well, that was a chipper. A bunch of trees fell down about a week ago. People were up here cutting them to clear the road, and probably just coming up now to finalize that, clean them up. Yeah, I think I better just turn around, down out of here. You know, there's been whole cultures of people, like the people on Iceland, for example. Well, Scotland, Ireland, England, Native Americans, actually all around the world, that have known for centuries that there are beings in the woods that you just can't see whenever you want to. Now, we've come along in these latter days, we call that supernatural, but actually in the whole scheme of things, that's just a natural state of affairs. We can't see every light that's out there. In the electromagnetic spectrum, we can only see a minuscule part. I don't know what it is, less than 1% right in the center. Visible light. And that light there, that light comes into our eyes. The thing we're looking at never really gets inside of our head. Just the light that bounces off of it and brings information to us of what that thing was, what it looks like, where it's at, whether we're looking at an apple or a squirrel or whatever. And when that frequency of light that bounces off of that thing gets to us, it has to be the kind of light that our eyes can do something with. We just can't see every frequency that does bounce and hits us in the eyes. Just a wee little portion called visible light. And the construction of the eyes of other things like insects and certain animals, they can see light of different frequency. They can see things that we can't see. You know, you look at the trees out there. All the leaves are gone. And in that little group of trees right there, there's all kinds of trees. Wild cherries, maple, beech, oak. But you know, they all have green leaves in the summer. That's because of the chlorophyll. All of the little leaves are just basically photocells created by an intelligent designer. It powers the tree to be able to carry on photosynthesis and thereby change the chemistry and nutrients in the soil into energy that they can use to grow, to live, to metabolize and reproduce. They're all green. However, the leaf really isn't green. Some are yellow, some are red, some are brown, and it's really been that way all year long. But the leaves are made up of little cells that fill up with green chlorophyll and covers up the true color of the leaf. So all year long, you don't know what color leaf is on that tree until in the fall, when it follows the laws established by the designer. All of the chlorophyll dries up. Rather than having it fill up all the cells are now empty. And the true color that was there all year long finally shows through and you get to see what it is. You know, this is amazing when you consider light. It's got all the colors of the rainbow in it. The visible light, the part of this huge spectrum that we can see, comes from the sun, comes all the way 93 million miles, 8.5 minutes to get here, and bounces off of one apple that we're looking at in an orchard. And that apple absorbs all those colors of the rainbow, all of them, except red. If it's a red apple, it doesn't have the ability to absorb the red frequency and hold on to it, so the red one is the only one that bounces back to us. And we think the apple is red. but it's not really red. Red is what it's not. It couldn't hold on to the red, so the red bounced back, and now the apple looks red to us, so we go through life calling that apple red. And the same thing with green grass, and the same thing with red tomatoes. And yellow delicious apples are yellow because the makeup of the skin of the apple is such that it can't hold the yellow frequency of light, so the light is yellow that gets back to us. And it's only light. The apple never goes into our eye. And the light frequency is changed as soon as it goes into our eye, hits the back of our eye, the retina. It's not light anymore. We never actually get to see the light. Our eye, by the wisdom of the designer, has the ability to change the light frequency, say from a yellow delicious apple. Once it hits the back of our eye, it is now converted into an electronic impulse, a little piece of electricity, just a little packet of electricity or a wave that is unique to yellow. If it would have been a red apple, it would have been a slightly different electronic impulse that would be related to red. Traveling along the optic nerve, goes back into the region of the brain that assimilates that into, well, builds a picture inside of your head of what you're looking at out there. You call an apple hanging on a tree in an orchard 93 million miles away from the sun, that provided the light to carry the information to you. Well, coming down near Route 88 here now. A big old tree right there. The limbs fell off of it. Can you see the pipe? There is a pipe sticking out of that tree. It came down to a fence here. And those big old limbs fell off. This past year, my son, a couple of my son-in-laws come down here and cut it up and blew it off of the road there. Anyway, looks like that truck that came up here put a sign up here, a traffic sign on the road. Probably saying road closed. Working up there on some trees that fell down. Get around the other side. I'll see what it says. Yeah. That's what it says. Road closed ahead. Well, there's the deer I was talking about the other day. Been laying there for a week now. Well, here we go. Heading back up to the house now. Anyway, we can't see everything that's sharing this world with us. The more time you spend in the woods, the more time you'll learn that, because the woods continue to be, well, a magical place. It's just enchanting. It's actually magical. And for thousands of years, as I said, all the cultures on the planet have oral histories and written histories of their conviction that things exist around and in the woods. They call them the hidden people in Iceland, and they're so convinced and believe as part of their culture that these little people exist, the hidden ones, that it affects their government, their culture, their society when it comes to building roads. If there is a place where people have reported over and over and over that they see these hidden ones, these little people, disappear by walking into a rock, walking into a tree, into a stump. It's not that they say the people live in the trees or live in the stumps or the rocks, but that's where they are. That's where they run to, or where they're going to avoid detection. On occasion they get caught out where they can't make it to a place like that, so they just disappear right in thin air. That's it's just stepping through. They don't live in the same paradigm that we do. They're more than natural. They can deal with natural laws, but they're not confined with them. If they need to, they can step into, two quantities of matter cannot occupy the same space at the same time. However, time is a dimension, like length, width, and height. Well, duration, or the specific spot or vector in the space-time continuum where something is, that is also a measurement. So even though two quantities of matter can't occupy the same space at the same time, they can occupy that exact same space at different times. And if you've got something tangible, something that really does exist, it's there, it can inhabit the exact same place where something else is if it does it at a different time, just one step at a time. And we've heard that a lot, talking about time travel. You'd be surprised how much of that is even mentioned in the Bible. I was going to say I'm not afraid, but I kind of try to avoid mentioning the Bible, because whenever I do mention it, once again it brings religion to mind, and I don't want to do that. Anyway, now people have been spending time out in the woods and can't deny that they saw something. It moved, and they got their eye fixed on it. Maybe they're carrying a 12-gauge shotgun or a 30-06, so they don't feel too afraid. And they wonder, what was that thing that moved? Something kind of big. So they walk over and look, and it's a stump. It's a trunk of a tree. It's a bush. And they say, wow, what in the world was that? I know I saw something. It must have been a deer, and it must have went in behind us. No, that was where it stepped out of this dimension into the other. You lost it, because the thing, they call them nowadays Bigfoot or Sasquatch or Yeti, and that's all they're concerned about. They don't seem to want to acknowledge the hidden people, the forest people, the Fae. some people got names for them, and when as soon as you hear that name, you think, yeah, it brings this stereotypical understanding to the forefront, and that's when people stop listening. Oh, you mentioned the fairies, the elves, the gnomes, the dwarves, the ogres. Those are just names that some culture applied to the things that they would see once in a while that are by default from another place, another paradigm that exists right here on the earth, maybe time shifted or something, just so that we don't coincide with each other. But they have the ability to step into our world and back out, and they call them elves, dwarves. I think maybe way in the past someone saw what we call Bigfoot. They call him an ogre. Oh, I remember reading the account of a lady up in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, 20-30 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Said she was in a backyard, and summertime. She was out there with her little boy, 3 or 4 years old or so, and he just raised his arm up and pointed over her shoulder and said, "Look, a little man." And the woman turned and saw this little man. He jumped down off of a wall to the other side, maybe 2 feet tall, 2.5, and she ran up there to look, and nothing. So it's times like that where you question your sanity. What happened right there? You know, did I see that? And another account, close to the same area, where it was late fall, early winter, and a lady was outside. She had a child out there and her husband, and she said, well, it's just about dark. Started to snow. It was just beautiful, she said. Great big snowflakes, no wind, just floating. She said, would you ask him to take their baby and go in the house she'd be in a minute. She wanted to step into the trees there of the woods by her backyard as it was snowing, and just follow the path for a little ways. So, you know, it's one of those surreal times, snowing in the woods, it's still twilight outside, and you only got a couple minutes. So he took the child and went in, and she walked over to the backyard and dropped in on the path and followed it into the woods. And you can see these bushes and things that we have here. You see a lot of that kind of stuff, you know, in Pennsylvania. So she was navigating around some of that brush on the path as it went around. And as it went around, she looked up to see where the path would meander ahead through the trees. And there stood a little man looking at her that she had shocked by coming so abruptly and silently around the bush, and came up on him and caught him right there, manifested in her same reality. And she said what got her is he fit the stereotypical description of a gnome. She said, pointed hat and everything. And when she stepped around the bush and saw him, she let out, you know, with a yell, "Oh!" like that. It startled her. And that startled him. He whirled around and ran into a tree right in front of her eyes. So nowadays we're seeing this competition on the internet about Bigfoot. And for the past 50 years, it's been confined to basically just Bigfoot. But now, from 2000 on up to now, people are starting to understand and to see that this thing they call Sasquatch or Bigfoot has some supernatural, it appears to be supernatural paranormal events associated with it when it comes to being able to disappear, to slip around through the countryside right where they're at without making any noise or sound. And if you see one, it only goes just a little distance and it's gone. It disappears. As big as it is, it's not the size of a chipmunk, it's maybe twice the size of a human being. Well, it's a shame that they have been confining it to just Bigfoot. There's a whole lot more involved here. You know, once again, I gotta mention the Bible. In the Bible, it talks about these beings, but refers to them mostly in their job title, not their specific name or species or creation type, but their job title. It calls them principalities and powers, rulers and dominions. Now, we should know what that means. That's authority. I don't know if you've ever seen a murmuration of starlings or not. They just look like a school of fish. You ever see them, how they're like flying in the air, getting ready to go on a migration? And they gather up and they fly in concert, maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 of them in the air, simultaneously, immediately. When one turns, they all do. They turn and they do this dance in the sky. Well, the Bible tells us, kind of implicitly, that God has given these beings the responsibility to check in and manage the processes of nature, to leave them alone mostly for the most part, however, to adjust them from time to time. The migration of the red crabs, the migration of the starlings, the migration of trout, the migration of monarch butterflies, to make sure that the particular mycelium in a certain area is healthy and up to standard so that the trees in the forest can continue growing. And the Bible lets us know a lot of it through the Apostle Paul. Well, you know, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, when God said, "Let us make man in our own image," he referred to himself in the plural. Let us make man in our image. Anyway, he goes on to say that he gave man dominion over the animals, over the birds, and over the fish. You can read it right there. We are one of those dominions. Well, it sounds like it might have been shut off already and I started it up again. Okay, that's enough for today. See you later.